Ladies and gentlemen, Kirk Thatcher and Darren Doctorman, the Weirded Beardos. It's the all singing, all dancing episode 10 of the Weirded Beardos, and here we are. It looks like Kirk is trapped in the Phantom Zone.
No, it was 10 fingers.
Oh, yes, 10.
Phantom
Yes.
Zone would have been more akimbo, more, this was
Yeah.
10 fingers, flashing 10. For all of you who are listening and can't see me, I'm taking my hands and I'm all those on YouTube, you're bored out of your minds at this point. But I'm going flash, 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 10. Okay, that was it.
While Kirk is talking, he is opening and closing his hands.
For our blind listeners. I guess all blind people are listeners because they can't be viewers. Wow. Just blow your mind.
That's,
There we go.
I hope we don't get canceled. Anyway, hi.
We haven't said anything about, well,
Easy.
or
Beep.
or those,
Or the beep.
yeah, exactly. I know if you're a white male over 40, you've got to be careful, man.
Well, I think
I mean,
if
for
you're
good reason. I'm not saying it's not
if
worth
you're
it.
anybody these days, you need to be careful because
Yeah, that's true. I think
you know
some people
the
rightly so
pointer
are doing
the
a little
pointer
more.
isn't going to stop with just one group. It's going to keep going.
No, I know, but I think some people are allowed a little more leeway with airing their grievances. Put it that way.
Like
I mean,
you.
I can't complain about anything really, and I shouldn't. In fact, a friend of mine asked me yesterday, "What are you grateful for?" And I just laundry listed. I mean, so many things, including this shirt. And she commented like, "Wow, that's great." And I said, "Yeah, you know, I probably in my 40s I hit some midlife depression, and you know, no family, no kids, no wife, and I'm like, nah, what's the point?" And I was reading stuff about dealing with depression, and I read about like gratitude. I'm like, oh yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just kind of just change your mind, change your attitude, change your life.
Yeah.
And I did. Wow, this is getting heavy for the first 5 minutes. But I did. I started going through the list of all things I was grateful for, and really realized that nothing to be depressed about. I mean, sometimes depression is chemical, which I get, or brain chemistry, so you can't really fix it. But yeah, so gratitude. Gratitude's the attitude, folks.
And we've transferred that depression on to our listeners.
That's right. Thank you for taking. Do you find that though, like energy transfer with people who are not not friends who are just going through a bout of it, but people who tend to be sort of on the negative side of things. Not they're bad or even negative people, but life
I've
for
found
them.
that often that
Yeah, it's kind of a constant struggle.
I am whittled down by negativity and people who
Well, it's hard because you want to be supportive, particularly artists. Like we all get
I don't want to be
periods of like I'm not working, I'm depressed, nobody loves me, nobody wants to hire me, and you want to be supportive. But there are some personality types, which is that is their that is their mode, that is their their operating.
Well, some people call them energy vampires, where they walk into a room and they suck all the energy out.
And again, being empathetic, I think it makes it worse because you kind of adjust to their level, which is kind of what you do if you're an empath or empathetic. I'm just pathetic, but I put an M in front of it. It makes me sound cooler.
That's Mr. Pathetic.
Mr. Pathetic sounds like a new DC super villain. Mr. Pathetic. Actually, be funny. Literally, like a cosmic energy vampire is like, "Hey, Batman," and just suddenly Batman's like losing energy, will to live.
Hello, folks.
Yeah, I'm sure it must be. Yeah, exactly. Hello, Batman. I'm sure it must be nice to have that batarang. It's just, anyway, there you go, Mr. Pathetic. Empathetic, and that he does the Batman thing. I think we just came up with a great supervillain.
Actually, he's French. He's Monsieur Pathetic.
And he's full of ennui. His sidekick is ennui.
Ennui Toulouse-Lautrec.
Yeah, exactly. I was just going like, what's a good Henry name? Ennui Toulouse. Ennui, come here and why? Because there's no good reason. Actually, I came. One of my favorite gags, besides that'd be a great band name, is coming up with goofy DC villains because they always had the silliest ones. But the Piddler was one of my favorites.
The Piddler.
And he would just pee on things, and he was just mildly disgusting. but then he could drink certain potions, and his urine would be either
But
acid.
I just wanted to add my notes, Batman.
It's me, the Piddler, and that means you're in trouble. You're in trouble.
Oh
Yeah, come on, it's
no!
Batman. It's DC.
Wow,
Thank you, thank you. That
that's
should be the name. That should be the
concentrated
name of
comedy.
this episode. You're in trouble.
Well, remember
Good. How are you?
last time we were chatting, we left off where I wanted to find out more about your time
In prison.
playing. No, were you playing J. Pierpont Finch in How
Oh
to
yes,
Succeed in Business?
our theater background. Yes, I did a few musical plays in high school, and the one where I played the lead was How to Succeed in Business,
Right.
where I played J. Pierpont Finch, which I don't know. I think Robert Morse created the role on Broadway and then did
Yes,
it in
he
the
did.
movie.
Yes.
Yeah, Robert Morse and Rudy Valley reprised their roles from Broadway in the movie, and it was.
Right.
So I'd never heard of it. I mean, I was like 14, 15, and I didn't know anything about that play. My mom had a lot of Rodgers and Hammerstein albums, so I knew like Oklahoma, South Pacific,
Yep.
those. I think just those two mainly. But so it seemed very modern, you know. Well, it was the 70s, and it was kind of created, 10 years earlier in the 60s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was fairly modern for the time. And I loved it. But I thought I was like 6 foot tall, 5'11", and kind of a lunk. And I thought I was going to get, I actually tried out for Big League because I'm, the older,
Right.
bigger kids usually play the older guys. But my good friend Jeff Bryant played him and did an amazing job. And so I got J. Pierpont. So I remember the teacher said, don't watch the movie.
Right. Because you'll get thrown off and try to.
You'll end
mimic.
up doing Robert Morse. So
Yeah.
I did watch the movie. I remember because I'm a rebel, Tony. So I did watch it and was like, oh wow, okay. Because but I mean, again, I was 15, so I kind of had that youthful enthusiasm anyway.
Right.
But we all auditioned, and then the headmaster of the school is a small private school called Berkeley Hall. What were we? The Saracens? No, that was Harvard. Barrett.
The Seraphims?
What's that?
The Seraphim?
The Seraphim. No, we were the Barons, Berkeley Hall Barons. The class sizes were like 22 kids, and we were one of the largest classes.
Wow.
I think at one point we had 28, and I think when we graduated we had 22. And then I went to a big school. We had 108 kids in my class, all boys school, Harvard, Harvard Westlake. But anyway, I loved that play, and just kind of that. Again, I just dropped into Robert Morris because it was so memorable. But it has great songs, and you did it too. You said.
Well, no, I didn't.
You're a fan.
But I saw it and I fell in love with it, and it is my favorite musical.
You saw the movie or the play?
I saw I saw the movie.
Oh yeah, okay. In theaters, on TV, or?
No, I saw it on TV.
Yeah.
And I watched it the first time because my dad liked it, and he said, "You should watch this. This is fun." And he was singing along with the Groundhog song, and it was a nice sort of bonding moment. But
nice. My father not a fan of musicals.
Yeah, which is. I was
the artistic son. I literally think he was worried I was going to be gay because I would do musicals and I was artistic. He just didn't. That was not any part of his growing up, of his career, anything. So just because I would do impression. I remember I was doing Carol Channing one day in the car.
Well, see, this doesn't give any reason not to question your.
Not that there's. Look, I just want to say up front, there's nothing wrong.
No, that's fine.
But Carol Channing.
But you're showing all the signs.
Yeah, exactly. And and I was happy about it. But my dad. So we're in the car, and I'm doing. This is one of those weird moments you remember. I'm doing Carol Channing. I'm talking to my mom, going, "Oh, Gail, she's lovely." And my dad almost stopped the car. He's like, "Stop that! Stop that!" And I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Avoid the appearance of evil." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You sound homosexual." I'm like, "I'm doing Carol Channing." He's like,
"Yes, that's what he said."
Don't do that.
This is Oh,
Yeah. So see, that ruined my drag career. I could have done a marvelous Carol Channing. I had a
you
clean
know,
shaven face. I was so smooth and delightful.
Kirk,
Um,
Kirk,
yeah.
I, no.
No? Okay. Well, don't crush my dreams.
Yet,
How dare you, sir?
if those are your dreams, they need crushing right now.
Come on.
Yeah,
I worked with
come on.
some great drag queens. I think they would have accepted me with open arms. That's all I'm going to say.
I hope so. I hope they would. But you know,
Yes. So, anyway,
stay in your stay in your lane.
you're like, it's not a fat joke.
No.
Can't help it. I expanded other lanes. I'm expansive. Um,
Well, stay in your lane, and it's not Nathan Lane.
I would, we think too
See,
much alike.
we think alike, Captain.
Ladies and gentlemen, the comedy stylings of Darren and Kirk, we share a brain.
But
I've got half a mind.
I would have loved to have seen you perform that because that's not an easy part. Those songs aren't easy.
No, and my voice, I couldn't get down here, so I was up. Now there you are. There's that face, that face. So I was, what is that
That
about?
somehow I trust.
Yeah, let's not put them
Yeah.
through that.
No, we're
It
gonna sing
may
all of them.
embarrass you to hear me
Hear
say
me
it.
say it, but say it I must. Say it I must.
Yeah, it's a
You.
great. I got goosebumps just remembering that.
They're, the
And
songs
trust,
are so good.
yeah, and they're
They're
not.
really good.
They're halfway. They're that transition between like Rodgers and Hammerstein and Sondheim. They're
Yeah,
not just
absolutely.
singing lyrics, which is my biggest beef with most of Sondheim stuff. And I know I'm going to get pilloried for that, but a lot of his stuff is like, I'm talking to Darren,
Right.
Darren, my friend. We're talking.
Right.
He's just like, okay, but How to Succeed had that mix of really strong melodies and a little bit of that sort of syncopated talking.
Jazzy. Jazzy.
Would you say snazzy or jazzy?
Jazzy.
Yeah, jazzy.
One of the things that I found out later that made me realize how much I liked the movie
Yeah.
was that the music was arranged by Nelson Riddle for the movie, who of course did most of the music from the Batman TV series.
Yeah.
And you can hear those orchestrations; they sound just like Batman in the
Really?
transitions. When you go back and see it, you'll realize, oh, now I recognize this because it's really amazing, and the direction and the choreography, which of course they changed for the film,
Right.
is brilliant because
Coffee break.
they also were able to include the exterior things happening. I mean the whole thing with him working on the outside of the building washing windows
How it starts, yeah.
is real, and it happens, and so you go from the real outside to the fantasy inside of the building, and it's a magical transition, and it just takes you along on the road. And I know our listeners are turning us off now because I didn't come here for
Well,
this.
what
What
are you
is
talking
this?
about musicals? And we're
What is this, PBS? What do you do?
No, they don't talk like this. It is a delightful play, Darren, and I
But
know you, our listeners.
I would love to see a Muppet How to Succeed in Business.
Oh, I try. I think I told you I tried to. Tried to sell that to the individuals running the Muppet franchise at the Disney, the good folks at the Disney Corporation.
Right.
And they're just like, nobody wants to see that. I'm like, all right. I don't think any of them watched musicals, which is interesting because it is Disney, and usually they kind of, since that's
Let's
their bread.
not go there.
No, I was just saying that's their bread and butter. I'm not casting dispersions.
I'm casting dispersions.
I'm not casting dispersions. But you'd think they would know musicals and know, like, oh yeah, I think maybe they were just afraid of paying the rights. Oh no, we don't
Of
own the
course.
rights.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well,
Anyway, enough about that. So, How to Succeed. If you've never seen it, I guess you can rent the movie or rent the DVD. I don't know if it's out.
one of the great parts of it that I think that they took from the stage production was that the actor who plays the head of the mailroom and the boss of the company are the same actor.
Oh, I didn't remember that. Did they just put him in a different outfit or something?
Yes, yes, because they don't appear in any scenes
Right,
together.
right. Was that Gatch?
No, no, no. It's Mr.
Pratt.
Twimble.
Oh, Mr.
Mr. Twimble, the head of the mailroom.
That's right, Twimble.
When
What a
I
great
joined
name.
this firm as a brash young man, I said to myself, now, brash young man, don't get any ideas. Well, I stuck to that, and I haven't had one in years. So this is the guy that is stuck in the mailroom, and he said he's got his quarter of a century pin. How long have you been in the mailroom? 25 years.
That's right. Yeah. Well, it's the names of that Twibble, Gatch, Brat, Mr. Brat.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a song that's incredibly prescient and shows that some of the issues that we talk about today have not
yes,
gone away. A secretary is not a toy.
right.
I was thinking about last time we talked about it, I was remembering some of the songs, but there's a great song called "A Secretary Is Not a Toy." I
Yeah,
know my boy, not a toy, to fondle or dandle or playfully handle in search of some puerile joy.
yeah.
And it gets even racier. Let's see. Uh,
Her pad is to write
and,
in
and
and
not,
not spend the night in.
yes. And when you put her to use, make sure when you put her to use, you don't find the name lying down on her
Her
caboose,
caboose.
which was
Dun, 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 dun,
yeah.
dun, 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 dun,
So
dun.
it's basically sexual harassment in the
Yeah,
workplace, and a funny song about it. Um,
it's a hilarious song.
Secretaries. I mean, do you even hear the word secretary anymore? They're
No,
assistants now.
yeah,
I don't think
they're
anyone.
executive assistants. Yeah,
Yeah, executive or just an assistant. Um, yeah, it's funny. They don't that term. I don't think it's considered pejorative, but it's just not used. It's assistants.
yeah, yeah,
I guess also because it's sort of without actually having any gender attached to it. It always kind of sounded like there would be a woman being a secretary. You've never heard male secretary.
right.
It's like male nurse. Now you kind of it doesn't seem to be a
Yeah.
thing. But yeah,
But the
interesting.
thing that I found most interesting is that it is almost exactly in the same world as the 1960 Best Picture, The Apartment, with
Yes,
Jack Lemmon.
and the TV
Eh,
series Mad Men.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's a more direct connection
Yeah, of
to Mad
course.
Men. Of course, Robert Morse played
The
the
CEO.
head of the advertising company,
Yeah, it's
and
a great
he's
deep cut.
oh, when I first saw that, I went,
Yeah,
oh my God, do they realize? And of
of
course they
course.
did.
I mean, come on.
Of course they did.
Yeah, yeah.
I got to see Robert Morse at a screening of the film in person a few years ago, certainly before he passed away. But
Yes,
it was
certainly. They don't roll his corpse out anymore. It didn't go well when they tried that.
these dead panels are not very interesting.
Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Morse. Thank you, Robert, and the family, and the Morse estate for wheeling him out here.
It's fascinating because he was so good in that role, and he's, of course he did the one man show of
Capote. Yeah.
Truman Capote, yeah,
Wasn't it called
and
True? TRU? I think it was just called True, wasn't it?
it might have been called just Capote.
Yeah, for some
I
reason
don't know
I was
because Truman might have been Harry Truman.
no, I literally think it was just True. TRU.
It
True.
certainly can
But
be.
yeah, I
I'm
do
not an
remember that.
expert.
And he kind of did the Truman Capote voice.
Right, right.
Not like that. Like it was really like I must. Which came first, Droopy Dog or Truman Capote? There's one for the ages.
Well, that. Did you ever see them together?
Um,
Hello, folks.
did I tell you that Droopy Dog George Lucas story?
You did not, but you're
Oh,
about to.
I'm going to. So I think I'd mentioned in one of our earlier broadcasts how I got the job at ILM was I was friends with Joe Johnston, who I met. We weren't friends in the beginning, but I stayed in touch with him, and then he recommended hiring me anyway. So this is around 82, 83, and we're friends, and we call each other and say, hey, let's go have lunch, whatever. So I call him one day, and he picks up the phone. He says, hello, and I go, hello, Joe. And, right? There's a beat of silence, and he goes, George?
Oh my
And
God.
I thought he was goofing, right? And so this started a thing that we do to this day. Yes, Joe, it's me, George Lucas. I was wondering if you would like to work on my next picture. And he starts laughing. He's like, Kirk? I'm like, and I start laughing, going, wait, you thought it was George? He goes, yeah. I mean, it was
That's
just, over the
weird.
phone. Yeah, so I'm like, wow. I mean, George, he doesn't sound like Droopy Dog. I'll just make that
No,
clear. But he does have kind of a quiet, like, Joe. So I can see where just, hello, Joe, could be like, hello, Joe. Anyway, I thought that was hilarious. So ever since then,
that's amazing.
when Joe and I talk on the phone, it very often starts with, hello, Kirk, this is George Lucas. Joe. George here. I was wondering if you would like to be at the opening of my new museum. Anyway, it's a dumb joke that I have kept alive for 40 years.
The thing about that is that usually when George Lucas calls people, he has his people do it.
You're way too animated
Yeah.
when George calls people. Yeah. I mean, look, we are not throwing any shade at the man. He's amazing, and the fact that he's an introvert and did all he did is a testament
It's
to,
amazing.
yeah.
It's amazing. He
I
is
did it. We
he,
poke fun
he is
because,
and has always been one of my greatest heroes.
absolutely. I mean, if you look at the, yeah, anyway, go read the book about George Lucas. We can talk about that for
There's
2 days.
several. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But the
But
best is
amazing.
Skywalking by Dale Pollock, because that was done under the radar before the clamps came down on information.
Oh, right. Well, he talks about his accident, and anyway, George, we salute you. Salute.
Absolutely.
And Joe Johnston. I mean, all these guys are
All
amazing.
these guys, the
And,
pioneers,
yeah.
they
What's
amazing.
interesting is kind of after the effects pioneers, who still, I mean, there's still that today, but it's all mainly in computers now. All the guys at Weta, the geniuses over
Yeah.
there, and I think it shifted from designers and filmmakers to computer programmers, which you never hear of those guys. You might, I mean, you hear of John Nolan's brother because of Photoshop, and
Right.
then, but that's kind of it. You don't hear about the guy who invented the flocking software that everyone uses now, or everyone took that and
Oh,
what I
you
used to
you
go-
mean you mean massive?
Matt, well, that's what one company called it. But I used to go to SIGGRAPH back in the 80s because,
Yeah.
again, after probably around 83, 84, I think 84 might have been the first SIGGRAPH. I'm like, okay, computers are going to be a big thing in the visual arts. Obviously, they were.
Right.
Yeah. And I got my Macintosh, which couldn't do, I was very disappointed because I thought it would be doing, the kind of stuff I saw. I mean, I wasn't that stupid, but
Well, it's only as good as its operator.
hey.
Hey, wait a minute.
I did it myself. I wasn't going to call some broad on a phone and say, help me use this computer. Anyway, I started going to SIGGRAPH, and, I got to meet a ton of people there who some of them have stayed friends. But, guys were pioneers. John Lasseter was the animator at Pixar. In the
Right.
beginning, they would throw these great parties, like he was Hawaiian shirts and beers for everybody. Really, really personable
All
guy.
six of them.
Tom Duff, Alvy Ray Smith,
Yeah.
Ed Catmull, all those guys. Still keep in touch with, well, not Alvy, but Ed and Ed's wife and Tom Duff. I mean, all on Facebook, really, but. But it was really interesting times because that was exciting. Like this is every year you would have the SIGGRAPH Film Festival, animated
Right.
film festival, and you would see the leaps and bounds it would go. It's like watching AI stuff now, or you watch AI stuff from ChatGPT or Midjourney from a year ago, and you watch it today, and you're like, what the? So, but I would say that's a much more compressed. SIGGRAPH was maybe 8 to 10 years before you'd see the kind of evolution that we're seeing now in months. Which is a lot of people are scared of it. We've talked about this, doesn't scare me. I think like any tool, if it's used for evil, it can be scary.
Right.
But I'm glass half full kind of guy. Even though I've had 2 glasses and I'm very full. I think I just see the opportunities, and that was one thing that I think I shared with Jim Henson, or we both saw technology as. This is cool. It's going to get cooler. He was very excited about computer. One of the first things I think I mentioned I worked on with him was Waldo, the 3D
Right.
3D CG puppet that's mainly featured. It was a little bit in the Jim Henson Hour, but mainly featured in the 3D movie because
Yeah.
he actually, yeah. So he was. I mean, I think one of the greatest tragedies is Jim. Well, for for a billion reasons,
Right.
didn't live to see
You didn't get to
where
see, yeah, where this tool
computers.
has evolved to.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because it's just mind blowing. I mean, it's funny. I you live in interesting times, and again, I always see the positive aspect. And I remember a guy, I was taking, oh, you know what it was? I was taking a Drew Struzan's intensive illustration class where you went away for like 5 days up to, like, think Big Bear or Lake Arrowhead, and you stayed in cabins with four or five other, or six or eight other illustrators. And one of them was an older guy who had been like a background artist at Disney,
Yeah.
and Photoshop was coming out, and he was just like talking about how it was like version 2 or 3, and he's like, "This is amazing, and you guys are you have this tool," and and he was just going on and on about how cool it was and what kind of blew his mind, like what you could do with it. And I realized, a year or two ago, like I'm that guy. I'm just going, you guys have this stuff that you can just dragon wearing funny pants eating pickles, and in 45 seconds you've got four versions of that.
Yeah.
And
All of them, not exactly what you wanted.
no, but here's the interesting thing. They're now coming up to fix that. You can put in your own artwork and say, I mean, I don't know. It's, again, I don't like the part of it, what do they call it? Not scanning the internet, but
Skimming.
skimming for other artists' work, I
Yeah.
think. But again, we kind of had that talk about like, well, when I wanted to do fantasy stuff, I would look at Frazetta and Roy Krinkle and be like, okay, what can I glean from that without just doing a Frazetta copy? I mean, Ken
Right.
Kelly made a career out of it. But then
Well,
and then there's, it's funny in illustration. Unlike the film industry, the pioneers who create a new look usually fight it, and then there's a whole chart somebody did of like
Right.
you fight it, and it's like the stages of production that ends with like firing of the innocent. But this is the
Right.
same thing. It's like you start out, you're an iconoclast, you're told you're garbage, your work doesn't mean anything, and fine art too. But I'm talking about the applied arts, the world we work in, where your stuff is weird. Like Tim Burton, he draws like a kid. This stuff's horrible. Then suddenly, oh, it's unique and original, and then
Right.
he rockets to fame and fortune, and then now people,
Celebrated, copied, ripped
yeah,
off. Yeah.
yeah, ripped off. I mean, imitation is the. Somebody just quoted the rest of that quote. Or
Right.
yes, imitation is the serious form of flattery for the untalented.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I'd never heard that before. I'm like,
I hadn't either, and I was
yeah,
it was illuminating to read the
yeah,
rest of
and
it.
I don't know if it was like a famous wit or an artist who said it, but it
Right.
certainly finishes out that sentence.
Or a famous nitwit, which it could have
Well,
been.
maybe.
When I
Besides, no, right, I'm not going to
when
get.
I used to teach at Art Center in Pasadena, I taught there for 7 years. There was a major push to call attention to and shy away from any stealing of other people's work, to maintain everyone's work as their own.
You mean between students or even like copying Sid Mead?
Anyone, to maintain the what's the word, the
Originality.
purity of their own work,
Yeah.
and not to copy off anyone, not to steal anything, not to rip off. And I can only imagine now what the discussion is around AI, because
Oh, yeah.
it is such a slippery slope
It
and such a
started with
muddy kind of thing.
Yeah, it started with term papers where
Yeah,
ChatGPT can say, "Here's a subject. Here's 10 points I want you to make," and in an hour, they had gone through 8 iterations, and you could just re-edit and tweak it, and make it sound like you. I don't know. I know you can tell now with news stories, ones that have been also with. God, I think the worst is YouTube videos where not only is it a synthesized voice, where there's like
right.
five of them you hear all the time, which really grates on me.
Yep.
but also you could tell it was written by ChatGPT. And
Right.
now I'm seeing videos about these guys who say how to make millions of dollars doing faceless videos, and
Right.
you just
Which
type in
is
the subject.
which is
Type
in
in the
itself
subject.
a faceless video.
Right, exactly. That's what's amazing. And well, usually they're on camera for a little bit that I've seen, but yeah, it is weird, and it in a way it does exactly that. It kind of blanderdizes the
Blanderdizes?
blanderdize, a word I made
That's a
up back.
fascinating word.
Yeah, the two words I made up back in the day for, especially from network executives or any people who are afraid of anything. What we're talking about. Oh, that's too different. That's too weird. People won't get
Right.
it. Blanderdizing, or could you make it a bit more grayish? It's
Nice.
very colorful. Your shirt's very colorful. Could you? And I just came up with a word. I mean, this was back in the early '80s. Just hearing notes from executives, typically non-creative people, who they have their purpose. And I don't hate executives. I hate dumb notes from executives. One of the funniest ones was from Star Trek 4. When we made the movie and the probe came down and made all these weird noises and the whales responded, and Dawn Steele, who
Yes.
was it's famous, but for those who knows are not Trek nerds who know about all this, the note came down from her in the studio. What are the whales saying? What is the probe saying? We want to know. Can you subtitle it or have a voiceover? So Leonard, like he was just like, oh my god! I remember he and Harv Bennett were just like, all right, hitting their heads. So instead of saying, you idiots, Leonard wrote back, what a great idea. We were thinking of this. Hello, why haven't you called? We've been trying to reach you. Are you okay? What's going on? Oh, you wouldn't believe, And they wrote out a bunch of things. And then I remember she wrote back like a couple days later, point taken, thank you. But it's that kind of, oh man, in TV, this is quoted often in TV. Talk about the thing you're going to do. Talk about the thing that you're doing while you're doing it, and then talk about the thing you just did.
Right.
And it makes anything boring as hell. Even in the animated stuff I work on, they go, "Hey, let's go climb that mountain. Boy, this mountain sure is tough. Hey, look at us. We're on the top of the mountain." And part of it is the writers, and again, I was guilty of it in early days of writing. It's not a radio play, but a lot of writers
Right.
start out with a radio play. Look out, that boulder's going to hit us. If Indiana Jones said, "Oh no, a boulder's chasing me," you'd be like, "Oh my god."
Well, he did, but you couldn't hear him over the sound of the boulder.
Holy crap, it's a boulder. Get me out of here. So I find that a lot of the network executive notes, and again, it doesn't have to be network, studio, or just producers who are attached to something, their notes are, could you please explain it for the slow kids or for anybody who doesn't, it's not immediately apparent. And then I've learned to say, but that's boring.
Right.
The best movies are the ones that drag you along going, all it does is it forms questions and then gives you the answer, as opposed to giving you the answer before you hear the question.
Right.
And you can do that visually or verbally, obviously. But if I were teaching a class on both writing and visual storytelling, directing, even the good comic books will do it. They'll show a close up of a hand grabbing a thing, and then two more panels away, and you realize it's a bomb. I mean,
Well, it's called storytelling.
well, it
That's
is.
the thing.
But I think it's funny because it's basically the same rules as in comedy and horror.
Right.
You don't give away the thing until the punchline or till the jump scare. And in movies, the jump scare in particular became so obviously set up that then clever directors started doing the anti-jump scare, like, oh, no, 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 no. Oh, it's the cat. It's the cat.
Yeah.
It's and then oh, we're okay, boom, and then you do it like, oh,
Right.
get people. And it's the same thing in just general storytelling. I'm just doing an episode in the show where I'm trying to remember the exact moment. Oh, without giving it any away, it's a kid trying to race to get to this boat that's leaving, and he works with a bunch of animals, and he lives like a mile and a half away from where the docks are, and he knows his friends are leaving, and he says, "But they're leaving now. How am I going to get there?" And they originally I shot this version of where you just see a wide shot of him on the back of these animals, and they're all running with him, kind of Dr. Dolittle to the rescue kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it just and I remember there was a question like, "Hey, could you show that first?" I'm like, "No," because then there's
Oh,
then there's no fun. The fun thing is either cut from him going, "Where am I to go?" to him going, "Ah, ah, ah," and then you widen down and show
yeah.
it, or cutting to a bunch of feet running and then arm up and see it. It's just it seems I think because we're steeped in this stuff and we grow up and we're visual thinkers, it's sort of like saying, "Hey, why not put a can of tuna in the punch?" You're like, "What?" Well, kids love tuna and it's a good source of protein and they like the punch. You're like, "Yeah, but it doesn't work." I understand your thinking there, but let's not. Let's do punch and then tuna, maybe in a delicious salad. Tuna, that should be the name of this episode. Tuna in the
Tuna
punch bowl.
punch.
Tuna in the punch bowl, shame on you. Anyway, that was my little soapbox.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's weird. And look, we've talked about this before. It's these elements of storytelling that are sort of natural to some people, but
Yeah.
other people just don't understand.
Well,
They don't understand what you want to tell your audience and what you don't. And also, like in mystery stories, you do give a little info to the audience so that they can figure it out before the main character does, because that makes them feel good.
right. Yes. And
That
and
makes
it
the
keeps
audience
them,
feel good and think that they're just as smart as the characters
keeps their
in the
attention.
in
Yeah.
the pro. Yeah,
You know who's a lauded director, and I think visually he's a great director. I wish he didn't do his own stories. Is M. Night Shyamalan, and I'm not throwing
yeah,
crap on him, but I think he's so good at telling a story with pictures. I remember Unbreakable, where you
hmm
didn't know what had happened, but you saw the little boy putting his parents' hands together, and then when I guess it was Bruce Willis when he was a kid, I
yeah,
think. Yeah. And that told the whole story. It's like the first
yep,
6 minutes of Up, except that was a little more detailed. But
right,
telling a story with a picture. But then my problem with Unbreakable is like it's the first two acts of a movie, and the last act is a text crawl. Like, did you run out of
right,
money? You create this
yeah,
amazing villain, and nope, good night. And you're like, oh, okay,
yeah. What? Whoops.
there's going to be a sequel, I guess. Um, but it's telling the story in bits that drags, like I say, drags the viewer along as opposed to, pushing them along or entices them
Right,
into deeper into
right,
it. I had to learn that. I was a visual. I thought visually. I knew how to tell a story with pictures. I didn't know how to write a 3 act story. I just like
right.
I always thought like in terms of stew. Well, there's going to be some meat and there's going to be potatoes and I'm going to braise the carrots. But what's the whole thing? I don't know. Um, and so we talked about this, I think, previously. Just I write the horrible version of it and then figure out where the problems are and like or what. Sometimes you don't know the the theme or there's the theme, there's the story, there's the plot, and there's the characters.
Right,
And everyone the obvious trope is character is story, and that's true.
right.
But then there's movies that completely ignore it and are great movies.
Sure. Well, there's always exceptions to the rules. You just
Like
have to know the rules and how to break them.
right. I mean, to me, the Muppet movie, it's sort of his character story, but you had to watch the Muppet Show, which is what they
Right.
relied on.
But you
I mean,
can, to be fair, you can watch the Muppet movie cold and get to know the characters eventually.
it's true, but it's really a series of gags and setups with something pulling them through. It's much like
Right.
the Odyssey. Like
Right.
here's the idea we're trying to get from here to there. Here's all the stuff that happens. If you took out a segment, would it affect the story at all? No. I mean, the first 20 minutes and the last 20 minutes are the actual plot, I guess, or the
Right.
story.
Right.
And then the rest is plot and, all the
On tonight's episode, Kirk Thatcher compares the Muppet movie with the Odyssey.
but it's a classic storytelling model.
Structure. Yeah.
Yeah, structure where you go from A to Z and here's all the things that happen. But really, there's probably about 3 points where you're actually touching on the hero's journey, whatever that is.
Right.
And Star Wars and the Joseph Campbell stuff really helped me go, oh, okay. I mean, now people follow it. It's like Save the Cat and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, I literally executives now are like, where's the inciting incident by page 12? You're like, what? Oh, you haven't read? Was it
Oh,
Truby?
you've been watching that. You've been reading that book, haven't
Yeah,
you?
Truby. There was Truby, and who's the other guy? Who gave? There was a guy who in L.A. would give lectures for like $800, and you had to go to his
Yeah.
class and
Yeah.
development. Everyone was taking it, so there's a reason why movies started all looking and sounding and feeling the same.
Right. Yeah. What the hell was his name? Yeah, because he had that book about
I have
screenwriting, and
copies.
it laid it all out,
Yeah.
and
By
you
page
know
12, you need to have page 12 to 15 to have the inciting incident. And, he starts, I mean, the Disney movies did it with their songs. What does the hero want? Who's the hero?
right.
What do they want? And it became a joke that, what was the movie that, oh, I know, I'm up at Treasure Island. There's got to be something better than this. I was like, okay,
Right.
and I remember the executives were like, you have to have that. I'm like, he's a kid serving table scraps with a rat and a thing. Like, do we really need to know that he's not happy there? But again, it was the musical kind of trope. And then somebody parodied it really well. I'm trying to remember who. I tried to do that in a Muppet script I wrote, but it never got made. But it was fun exercise to write the. Of course, here's what I want, you idiots. Like how is that not how is that not obvious? One thing I want to talk about. I don't think if we have enough time. It was just when I was like, oh, what's an interesting topic? Impressions.
Yes.
You and I both do impressions, and
Yeah.
you're really good at a number of them, and I'm decent enough at another of them that people have said, well, that's really good. The thing is, and this is more about not doing a bunch of impressions, but why impressions are such a male-dominated thing, although that's changing a bit.
That's interesting.
I thought, again, I mean, if you did a good 2 or 3 impressions in high school or even junior high,
Right.
that was coin in the male realm. I don't know if girls liked it so much, but other
No,
guys,
not at all.
dude, yeah, they didn't care. But other guys are like, oh man, do your John Wayne or do your Peter Lorre or whatever.
The funny thing is, because I was in what they call forensics, meaning speech team,
Ah,
which is various quote events that you could perform in, and they would have contests every weekend in the spring, and we would go to all these contests, and I did several events. I started out doing what they call extemporaneous speaking,
right.
which you would take files and news stories and try to come up with a speech to convince someone of something.
Oh, I didn't
And
know there was a convincing part. I just thought it was like, I'm going to give a talk about. I thought what it was here's a subject. You got 5 minutes, do a talk.
Yeah.
20-minute. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, basically.
Hold 1 second. I just got a knock at the door. I'm getting a delivery.
All right.
We'll edit this part out.
Will we? Or maybe
Or
we'll
not.
just leave it and I'll just go on talking. And people will realize that I am the interesting one rather than certain other parties on the podcast. But no, it's all magical. And thank goodness you scheduled your delivery for in the middle of our podcast.
I didn't schedule it. They just say will be delivered between 8 and midnight. It's the new Frazetta. You can see that it's the Frazetta Giant Taschen.
Sweet.
Yeah, it was on sale at 50% off. It was like $200. Was $99. I'm like, okay.
Congratulations. That's a nice one.
Well, I mean, Frazetta. This is not unique amongst artists, but of our generation and ilk, he was the ne plus ultra king of fantasy illustration. Still is considered, he's like Alphonse Mucha for Art Nouveau. Frazetta is fantasy, sword and sorcery
Yeah.
illustration.
Yeah, a pioneer who was copied and ripped
Well,
off
what's
from.
interesting
And,
is if you look at Krinkle and Al Williams,
yeah,
who was he was a contemporary, but Krinkle and there was another artist that they go, I mean, these guys really influenced Frazetta, and then you see it and you're like, oh my god, yeah, I mean, almost down to poses and
Sure.
compositions. So everybody, that was my point earlier about
but
yeah.
he was the one who synthesized all these
Yes.
things and created a style from them.
Absolutely, but I will say, if you look at Krinkle, it's pretty.
I don't want to look at Crinkle.
Look at Krinkle. Please look at my Krinkle. Chris
Oh,
Krinkle.
Mary Poppins. What was the name of his other leg?
That's just ridiculous, you see. Tonight on Battle of the Ed Win. Speaking of impressions, anyway,
The Ed Winner.
my theory was that it's in the male brain to do impressions and consider it, wow, that's a good thing because of being the hunters. When we were hunters and someone
Yeah,
could do a moose
because
call
you
or,
would have to mimic the sounds of these animals to make
yep,
them feel safe and
right.
trick them.
Or, a
I
mating
think
call or whatever.
that's an interesting, yeah, that's an interesting outlook, and I think that it's probably exactly right.
Well, but then that goes to like literally like our animal brain, like because it tickles a
Yeah,
part of the brain. It will also, watching when Pokemon became huge and Pogs and me with my collecting of books and figures,
hmm,
the collection thing. I wonder is again part of that hunter. I've
could
got to
be
catch them all. I've got again. It
right.
doesn't seem to tickle, and again, I'm painting with a broad brush, but most of the women I know did not have that. Like I've got
Right.
Pogs and Pokemon. Pokemon might have crossed more into. I know a lot of women, or who were into it because they were cute. But that collecting, gathering, sort of desire
Mindset. Yeah.
mindset. But I mean, you could probably argue that off. It's like, hey, it's storing nuts for the winter. Like it's just a survival thing.
Right.
So it isn't masculine. But impressions seem to be a very male dominated. And maybe because women weren't going to comedy or anything. There's some. I mean, SNL now has great women on there who do really good
Sure.
impressions. But so maybe it is just cultural. I don't know. But it was always interesting to me that guys would do again, talking junior high and high school, and then still now, there's guys, Jim Meskimen, who's an amazing mimic. He's got
Right.
his whole Instagram, maybe a YouTube channel too, where he just does impressions.
Hmm.
Morgan Freeman and Christopher Walken and all the ones that we all do. But I'm like, it's it's a great skill, but is it a useless skill except for making your friends laugh?
Well, I think it's a good skill to make your friends laugh because that's important, and it
But
helps.
it does turn into a career. Like Rich
Right.
Little and John Biner, some of the guys from like we're talking
Right.
60s and
Frank
70s,
Gorshin.
Frank Gorshin, had a career at it. After that, I know. I mean, I guess it's a stand-up career. It's like, ladies and gentlemen, the impressions of so and so. But outside of just an end unto itself, like ventriloquism, like
Right.
it's a thing that you do to do the thing, and it's not like that's going to turn into a great career unless you want to be a ventriloquist.
Well, I lost my track before, but I was talking about during high school and doing forensics. I
Yes,
also
yes,
did
sorry.
other. That's all right. I also did
No, I
other.
apologize. I didn't want to interrupt you and make you lose your track.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So anyway,
I won't. I won't. I had three other things to derail you with, but I'm going to stop and be a nice boy.
I also did an event called Humorous Interpretation, which was reading a script and giving it different characters. You gave you were standing in front of the audience, and you would give each character a different eye line, and you would switch back and forth depending on
Now,
who was
was it
talking.
was it straight material or was it comedic?
No, it was humorous
Okay,
because
it was
there was also dramatic interpretation, which
right.
was the straight drama.
Well, like
Um,
Reader's Theater, yeah.
yeah, yeah. Readers theater is with a bunch of people, and interpretation is one person.
Ah, okay.
So because we also did readers theater.
Sure.
But I think we called it group interpretation though. Anyway, but I remember taking this little seminar about being better at speech events, and the person doing it said, "Start gathering your voices now.
Oh, right.
Make it an effort to add to your collection every day and work on them. You listen to tape recordings and you talk along with tape recordings if you wanted. That's how I learned how to do Carl Sagan. I would watch Cosmos, and then I would think along with him and talk about all the vastness of the galaxy and that we are all made of star stuff. and but it's that process where it's a listening thing first
Absolutely.
because it's listening, it's music, it is all these things
Rhythm.
that we have the capacity of in our brain to mimic. because
Well,
it's you're getting the timbre, you're getting the rhythm,
pitch.
and you're getting all these things that are so musical that you don't even think about.
Yeah, it's like doing Ian McKellen. You know, it's like kind of back in the throat and breathy. Um,
Yeah.
one thing. Oh, you were talking about impressions and what was it? Reader's Theater or oh, damn it! It was an interesting thought that you triggered. You
Uh-huh.
triggered me.
I'm a trigger.
Um, something. Oh man, it's I've got to stop drinking during the day.
Day drinker, one way
Um,
ticket. Yeah.
Doing impressions, Jim Meskimen talking about people who do it, who trying to do it for a living, or what the living is doing it. Oh, it'll come back to me. Just keep
Yeah.
drumming on like you do. I'll remember.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Look, you can't see my upper teeth. I could be completely void of teeth, and you would never
You're
know.
all mustache, man.
I'm all well, and I'm
All
doing
stash.
all
The
stash.
all stash.
Thatch his stash, the thatch stash. I'm growing it down. I'm getting the Wilford Brimley where it goes to my lower lip. But
Uh-huh.
the problem is there's about 4 months where you just get food all over your.
Oh my God, it's horrible. I just trimmed mine at
Well,
the
yeah,
lip, and it's
I
awful.
waxed it obviously this morning, and so you can see I'm starting to get that.
Wax on, wax off.
Yes, well,
I don't really care what wax on does, honestly.
yeah, you stop waxing off. And he waxed on and on. It is a weird. There's an etymology question. Why do we say waxing on and on? He waxed.
Well, I mean they call the phases of the moon waxing and waning.
I know it's a term waxing. If you were not an English speaker, and you hear
Right.
someone waxing on eloquently, you talk about the waxing moon, you talk about candle wax and waxing your furniture and waxing the floor. You'd be like, what does this word mean? It's like the
Yeah.
Hawaiian version, dakine. Like it means everything.
Right.
And it's all contextual. But it is a weird word that, I mean, candle wax, waxing the floor. That makes sense. Waxing a car because it's all about applying wax. But a waxing moon and a waning moon, waning I
Yeah.
get it, but also
Yeah. Waning goes away.
waxing eloquent, waxing on about something.
Right.
How?
I think it means moving forward. I think it means moving forward because the process of burning a candle is immediately evident. See, this is a complete guess. This is all bullshit.
I will
But
accept it into the
into the realm of possibilities.
realm of possibilities. Exactly.
Uh,
Oh, go ahead.
but yeah, because the back to the high school thing.
Yeah, and impressions and doing voices.
In humorous interpretation, I did a cutting from Doctor Strangelove, and we took scenes from that and incorporated it into an 8-minute piece. And I hadn't seen the movie. I didn't watch the movie. So I was doing these character voices
Yeah.
for the various characters and not knowing that it was, from, I mean, I knew it was from a film. I just hadn't seen it.
Right.
So I wasn't copying anything. I was just doing these voices on their own. But when I saw the movie, I went, "Oh my God, this works so much better."
I think this. Yeah, boy, these guys did not get the character.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
I remember what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
When you do an impression, do you find, and I've heard from other impressionists who do it for a living, or at least are famous for it. Is there a phrase or a word or something you say to get into that? There's
There
a trigger word or
often.
phrase. Yeah.
What just like Frank Oz said, his trigger for Grover is
Really?
yeah. He said that in the documentary, the Muppet Guys Talking.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's just and it's hilarious because that is totally the character right there.
Well, the one that I learned I could do, like in my 50s, was when my voice dropped finally.
Mm-hmm.
But I was telling someone my favorite line from Star Trek 4, or the one that still makes me laugh, was Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah.
He was like, Spock, it's in all the classic literature of the day, yada yada. And he goes,
Ah.
the giants. And I was like, oh
The
shit.
giants. Yeah.
I sound like, So that to me is how I get into Leonard's voice. The giants. And Morgan Freeman is Andy Dufresne.
Yeah.
So it's funny, and I thought it was just me, even back as a kid.
No,
It's
because
another
you need to hear it before you do it,
yeah, yeah,
and the shorter the trigger you can have to set you on the correct path.
yeah.
Because obviously, as mimics, you you can fluctuate greatly
Well, it
because
depends on what you had for lunch.
you know what I mean. You're just that
I'm
smart
just keeping
aleck
it
kid in the
sassy,
back of the
man.
room. You're
Keeping the
sassy.
listeners, keeping the listeners entertained, man.
Oh,
It's the
that's what it is.
caffeine. Don't blame me. Blame the chemicals.
Blame the cup. Yes, but that's totally right. Because Kevin Pollock and Dana Carvey talk about this because they
Yes.
apparently during the election years ago when what's his name was running, the
Bush?
Texas guy. No, the Texas
Oh,
guy,
Ross Perot.
Ross Perot.
Ross Perot.
They were Dana Carvey was given the assignment to do a Ross Perot that Saturday,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Of course.
And
Good
Dana
story.
and Kevin Pollock were on the phone trying to figure it out, and they both figured it out on the phone together, and they found that I think
That giant sucking
I,
sound.
yeah, the giant sucking sound. I
Giant
think
sucking
the hook was. I think Dana Carvey said the hook was, uh, Larry, let me finish. Larry, let me finish, Larry.
sound. Okay.
And he used that to get him in the mindset for doing it. And it's
So,
crazy, but it's absolutely true.
and again, that's a thing that I don't know where that. I guess it's the same thing as I'm gonna sing something in the key of C, and if you're
Right,
if you have that memory in your because you're a vocalist, you're a singer, you go like it's a pitch pipe in your head for the
right.
voice. Yeah.
And some people have perfect pitch, some people don't. I don't have perfect pitch, but I can hear it when I hear it.
Yeah, my mom, when I started doing musical theater, my mom would just sit with me in the piano, and then my vocal teacher, just hit a note, hit that note, and the
Right.
point, I'm way out of shape. In fact, it's funny. I picked up the ukulele and the guitar a few years ago, and I play the ukulele more like guitar. I'm not going. I'm more like doing a long, long time ago. I'm doing
Right.
weird folk songs that I liked in the '70s and '60s, but. I can whistle on key much better than I can sing on key now. And I don't
Mm,
know exactly why that works, but I can hit the note whistling without going like, I just go the
right.
whatever.
You know where the center of it is.
But my voice, I'm doing a long, a long, a long, a long, long, a long, long time, whatever it is. And I'm like, why can I whistle the notes way better in the melody, I should say, without really fumfering around? I don't know. Weird.
Maybe you're
My
still
brain.
getting used to your maybe you're still getting used to your voice.
Well, it did drop, Darren. Finally, in my mid 50s, I realized I could get down here. And it's finally because, I started eating red meat and
Well,
drinking
that's
lots of
good.
whiskey.
Whiskey.
Westgate Boys. Yeah, well, it was. It helped. Doing Rodney Dangerfield is what got me there, and then
Right.
it helped with my Thurl Ravenscroft.
Right.
Although those guys, I mean, you hear,
Oh my God, the balls on those guys.
yeah, they were down by their knees.
Yeah.
I mean, Thurl Ravenscroft, this was his speaking voice, and then he could
Yeah,
go on
right.
a little lower, yeah. Dangerfield was a little easier. I don't know why.
It's. I don't know. You just. That's the other thing. There's no school in it. You just sit around. This proves that most guys who do impressions really well are nerds and live alone, because
Well,
countless hours. I mean, just same with artists. You sit there drawing or painting or sculpting. Oh, I know what something that you said earlier
yeah,
about copying, and I think it is we're talking about art in general,
right.
whatever visual or musical. It comes from an insecurity, but also because you're so impressed by your heroes.
That you
Again,
want to be like
you
them.
want to be like them, and you look at your own stuff, and you're like, oh, that's crap. Like,
Right.
so bad. I mean, the only reason people keep doing art is because they want to get better. until they reach a point where then it becomes a career and then they hate it because like, oh my God, the thing that
That's
I
right,
enjoy
because you're
doing now.
forced to be creative on demand
Yes,
at
and
at gunpoint.
that is the difference between a professional and an
Professional and a yeah.
yeah, as you go like, all right, because again, direct. I've mentioned this to people who want to be directors. I said, look, when you have unlimited budget and you're Jim Cameron or anyone in that ilk, David Fincher, you can sort of create 90% of the atmosphere of the set, whatever you want, the camera. But as a working stiff director, basically
gotta
your professionalism shows up when you roll with the punches.
right.
Oh, that set isn't ready, or it's only one wall, or your actor's sick today, so what are you going to shoot because they're in every scene? And how are you going to do? And it's more your emergency falling back on what you can do or how you can do it that will get you the next job. Because you're really a problem solver, and again, unless you're doing an independent film that you financed or your uncle or the financiers trust you,
Yeah.
you're always doing it as as a job, and it's how you roll with the punches and the curveballs. And someone said, asked me what's the hardest thing about directing the Muppets, and I said physics.
Right.
That's what you're always pushing against, because in your mind, they always say, "Ooh, would you do storyboards?" I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Unless if I had a set that was built, sure, I could just go and photograph the angles, but storyboards lie particularly with the Muppets, because they're not human scale, but we
Right.
tend to shoot in human scale things. So most storyboard artists are used to a guy walks in the door and his head is, a foot below the top of the door jamb. Kermit walks through the door, his head is below the doorknob.
Right.
And so they don't draw that. They draw Muppet-sized doors, like no. And so
No.
unless you have someone who's really aware of the Muppets, it's not worth it. I just write a shot list that's a shot list. Wide two shot, over the shoulder, 50-50. And then,
That's one of the things that I ran into on my first directing thing for the fan film. That I went in there as an ex storyboard artist, and I went in there with storyboards for this after reading the script. But the wonderful thing that I learned was that you don't need storyboards. In fact, it's better if you just sit with the actors and see where things are going. Then you can decide where you're going to be.
yeah, and I think that's why people like Penny Marshall and who came from acting,
Yeah.
kind of like, because I started out being, again, I did storyboards and things, and it was very like, well, here's how it's going to go. And then you meet the talent, or you just meet physics, like your set doesn't do that, or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God, I just got to throw everything away. Storyboards are
But
great.
part of the ability that you need is to be able to throw everything away
Well, that's what I mean. It's
and work on your feet.
right. Think on your feet. Like, okay, well, here's
Yeah.
what we're going to do. And partly the job of the director, I've always said the one thing only really a director can do is the blocking, working with the actors and how they're going to do it. But you have to know why in other words, and that is driven by why. What's the story about? What's important in the scene? There's a Woody Allen movie that I'm really impressed by I'm impressed by a lot of his movies, but Bullets Over Broadway.
Sure.
There are entire scenes in that where it's just a locked off wide shot with sometimes characters this big down a hall, and then they come forward. Oh,
Right.
There we go. And finish the scene here. He never moves the camera, doesn't do any coverage. And I worked with a guy who was his AD, and we talked about that. This is on the show Lazy Town, this is a bizarre story. So Woody Allen's AD, who'd done 8 of his movies, was the AD on this crazy kid show we did in Iceland called Lazy
Right.
Town. So between takes and at lunches and dinners, I'd say, you got to tell me Woody Allen stories. And so I brought up Bullets Over Broadway. Like, wow, he goes, he's just lazy.
Yeah.
He had a
Talk
budget.
about Lazy Town.
Didn't have a big budget. Didn't have a lot of time. So he just like, yes, do it in a wonder. I remember he's so circumspect in his use of camera movement that there's a scene where there's 2 guys at the bar, and then the shot starts, and you're kind of in a pretty wide shot, and they're 2 there talking. And then when it gets into a conspiratorial moment or something, the camera moves in a pretty clunky dolly move into a tighter 2 shot, kind of like we're framed right now, right?
Right.
And it kind of, you kind of go, whoa, what's happening? Because so much of that movie is just a little bit of a pan, a readjust, someone walking in the room. And it was such a I mean, again, brevity is the soul of wit, but it's also shows you really know what you're doing if you don't do that much. You know, it's like
Right.
good design doesn't have to be busy.
Yeah.
It just has to be effective. And I learned a lot. In fact, I've tried to do that a couple times. It sounds dumb, but in this animated series I'm doing, which is CG, is just
Yeah.
let a shot play in a wide shot. And,
Right.
you know, not all the way to the Batman blocking, which is a wide shot where people come up and go, but Commissioner. And they pause it, they do soliloquies towards camera.
Right.
But, because the show just isn't written that way. But it is it's one of those aphorisms that's true in all art forms. Writing, directing, sculpting, you know. One of my pet peeves of all these new ZBrush sculptors, and you can do amazing, and there's amazingly talented people, but sometimes they just do too much because they can.
Right.
You have wrinkles on wrinkles on wrinkles on knobs, on horns, on heads that have 17 eyes, and you're like, it's an amazing tour de force of sculpting, but it's a terrible design. I don't know what to look at.
Right. Right.
I mean, not to pick on a particular show, but I think
Let's pick this up in the next episode as a bit of a teaser.
there you go. We'll talk about
Much like you teased with Leonard Nimoy's desk and never fulfilled that that outcome.
There's
Which
something.
I don't think it had an outcome. I think you were just teasing.
No, it did. There's a whole story. Actually, there's stories I can't tell about Leonard Nimoy's desk.
Well, that's what I figured.
But there's probably a R-rated version.
Next time on the Beardos.
Oh, that's yeah.
Okay.
When you hear the Piddler say,
Oh, was that me?
"I'm not American, I'm European on your leg."
Oh my goodness.
All right,
Thanks
Good one,
for
buddy.
Another
Number
fun,
10.
fast-moving hour.
we're gonna start having other people on who are less stupid than we are.
We're gonna have guesticles on.
Gesticles. Big, firm gesticles. All right. On that note,
Thanks for hanging with us.
yeah, sorry about Darren. This, therapy's working in the meds.
Go back to your lazy town.
All right.
Next time